Hello there, Qckslvrslash here today, and we have a video courtesy of Zach Wolftamer in the Tier 6 Japanese battleship, the Fuso. And the Fuso has always, and in my opinion, will always be a beast. One of the things that makes it so effective when you look at her is the 6 turrets. Now, I know she doesn't have any more actual barrels than something like the New Mexico, but by splitting it up into more turrets, you're able to partition your fire more. You know, in a New Mexico, you're committing 3 shots by clicking once, whereas in this, you're only committing 2. Which means, in those situations where you're trying to range a target by firing, one of your turrets, well, you've still got a larger chunk of your firepower left. It's also a very accurate ship, good range. She's speedy enough. I'm not going to say she's fast, but she gets around the map quick enough. And, well, once you've got the top hull, her range, all of that is great. And I believe they've removed one of the hulls, if I recall, in one of the more recent patches, so you don't have to go through that really terrible part. But the Fuso has been, always will be, kind of one of those ships that I just hop into occasionally to sail around in. And it's just because I like it. It's plain and simple. Now, interestingly enough, Zach Wolftamer is in a Tier 8 match, technically, with each team having one Tier 8 battleship, a couple Tier 8 cruisers, and a Tier 8 destroyer. And, for battleships, being small can be pretty rough. And hopefully that does not become the case for Zach. Unfortunately, there's a pretty big chunk of ships south of this headland here, and well, at least one of them's a higher tier. We've got a Chapayev coming in close, and I always get worried approaching this chunk of land, because just like this Akatsuki, you can almost guarantee there's a destroyer on the south side, because DDs love to just throw torps into the openings either side of this island, into the cap where A would be if this were domination, and just work over battleships and cruisers that aimlessly sail in. So you've definitely got to be careful. And Zach fires his first volley and not a single shell hits, and he runs into his North Carolina. And you can see just before he fired, he did kind of check his quarter, but he kept his rudder over and, well, collision ensued. Thankfully, no real damage done, and the pair of them look to have dodged any potential torpedo bullets, because there are none so far. And by now you'd expect that destroyer. Overleads the Gneisenau, and so far these guns haven't proven their worth, but they will. And with these Tier 6 battleships, you just have to keep yourself in a match long enough to get enough volleys off. Because eventually you're going to land those big damage hits. You just need some RNG to connect. Fires a pretty quick snapshot at the Chapayev, and that one's actually looking really good. And, 3 Citadels. There's the first kill. The guns behaved, and no more Chapayev. But if you look over Zach's shoulder, there is a sinking cruiser on his team too. So things are all even up at this corner. Over on his port quarter, you've got a Cleveland and Fiji. Now personally, I would be trying to whip my guns around and get them onto that Fiji. Help your Cleveland, get rid of the cruiser behind you. But Zach decides to continue turning right, gets his guns on this Fuso, and lands a Citadel fairly far forward in my opinion, but can't complain about the damage. And in my opinion, this Fuso, and they're pretty screwed. What it comes down to is with Zach here, the destroyer, and in North Carolina, who may be overcommitting a little himself, that Fuso's going to have a very hard time disengaging from this location. Gets away from a lucky one there as Zach overleads again. And a bit of a trend there, I think. It seems his first volley is always just a little bit ahead of the targets that he's shooting at. And once again, gonna contact this North Carolina, but that's not what you're worried about. What you're really worried about here is this Qckslvrslash, and it's just potential to do a lot of damage. Another shot out, not really much damage, and there's the torps. And that sucks to eat. You gotta be careful around these German BBs, because they can run around with torpedoes. The second you get into 6 kilometers with pretty much any German ship, you should be thinking torps. And he's going to bypass the Gneisenau here to try and secure a kill on the Arizona, and unfortunately only 4,000 damage out of that volley. I really liked the idea of trying to get rid of the Arizona. It's on low health, good target. Unfortunately now he's really close to this Gneisenau, and the Gneisenau is, it's gonna be dangerous. See him getting in close. Rest of the guns fire off. He gets some damage out, but there's the torpedoes, and oh my god! That, in my opinion, is luck. By all rights, he should have been dead. And the Qckslvrslash just fired every one of those torpedoes way too far forward. And I suspect that Gneisenau captain was probably relying 100% on firing at the lead indicator. And when you get in close, that's a mistake. You need to just more intuitively lead over just clicking where the gray box says. But gets away with one there. Can't complain about that. Gets another chunk of damage in and is up to 2 kills, 60,000 damage, and look at that. The Fiji is still alive. And that's personally why I would have, turned my guns around to try to focus fire on that Fiji, is the Fiji really does outclass a Cleveland, and any situation where you can just protect a ship on your team by providing some assisting fire, I really think can have a big impact over the length of a game. They lose the friendly North Carolina. Hopefully they can get rid of this Fuso here in another volley or two, and that a hit like that's not going to do it. And you can see him continuously checking his quarters, looking for where that Fiji is, and I think here he's making the move to come about. And you really have to, because left unattended, that Fiji with his rate of fires, those British AP shells, will end Zach here. And you can see he's focusing on where he wants the guns to be. I would be being careful to keep my mouse just to the left side of my bow to keep these stern guns also facing forward, because you want all your guns on target as soon as possible in a situation like this. Fortunately, a British cruiser, 6.5 kilometers, should not be difficult to hit. And big hit, but not enough. 3,900 hit points left, and now you start worrying about those Fiji torpedoes. The secondaries start going off, all those gun crews getting scared, being like, we gotta kill this thing. And you'll notice something. Zach came hard over and really slowed up here. Like, full brakes, hard stop, aims blindly into the fire and picks up the kill, relying on that instinct and just knowing where that Fiji had been seconds ago to put in a well-aimed shot and finish off a deadly target. The torpedoes go by harmlessly, and things are looking better again. Teams are pretty much even, and now Zach's pretty much one-on-one with an enemy Fuso. And has about a 10,000 hit point lead. The key here though is going to be finishing this Fuso off before any support can arrive. Because Zack himself is pretty far away from any teammates. You can see most of his team still sitting on the north side of the map, and the enemy team isn't too far off. And there's some of that harassing fire. So I kind of like his decision here. He's angled decently to the Fuso. You know, the Fuso shells are going to be coming in. He's a little side on maybe to some of that fire coming in from the destroyer, but it's only destroyer fire, and that Nagato is sailing away. So in this situation, you want to get in close and get those shots in. And that one's only another 2,000 damage. So from here on in, what I'd personally be trying to do is establish a position where I've got that Fuso's side. You can see him turning, clearly trying to get the rest of the guns on, and Zack is sitting a little flat on and eats a almost 5,000 damage volley. Puts in a return volley, 10,000, that's a good hit, and now you got to get your rudder hard to port, get your nose in. You know, you need to increase that angle so that this enemy Fuso shells ricochet rather than penetrate. He did just that. Shells bouncing off, and now you just gotta hope. Personally, I would be aiming up in the superstructure, kind of like he did, hoping for that shot, and he doesn't get it. Fortunately, there's no shortage of guns to try to get it, and there's the kill. Picking up his 4th kill, up to 100,000 damage, and now he's no longer potentially facing odd numbers. And interestingly enough, that enemy New Orleans sailed away. I really think when he was here, had he come down to support this Fuso, it could be a completely different story. But he chose to retreat with his Nagato, and now Zack's going to have a chance to get in some free long-range fire, and those shells are looking very good. The New Orleans is turning, trying to dodge them, and oh, crappy RNG there. Shells missing left and right. So for the enemy team, one of the big issues with where Zack is right now is he's not really in firing range. Nothing's got him close enough, and he's going to be able to repair a very hefty chunk of damage. And battleships in particular, when they start to get on low health, you need to focus them down. Because, you know, at high tiers, battleships with superintendent and running premium consumables, even if you get them to 1,000 health really early in a battle, you can just sail off to the corner of the map and pretty much recover most of your health, assuming it's the right type of damage. Now, you are going to hit a wall where you just can't repair anymore, and that happens, but it still puts you back in a game that you should have been out of. And well, Zack's almost at half health again. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. And then furthermore, this New Orleans has just made a big mistake. You can see he's turned around, the Nagato has as well. I think the New Orleans is wanting to charge in at this destroyer perhaps, but he's putting himself in a crossfire between 2 battleships. And he can't put his nose in. He's got to choose. He's either going to be giving his side to Zack in the Fuso or the Gneisenau original Jim. And that's a really poor place to be late game in a cruiser. Case in point, perfectly side on. The shells are looking good. Decent hit there, 7,600 damage, and the Eugen finishes off the Orleans. So now it's just the Nagato. Well, Nagato and a DD, but the destroyer hasn't been spotted in some time, and that would be starting to concern me. Now, with where the Nagato is, I would really be considering right now popping my spotter plane up. There's always the chance it sees those torpedoes just a few seconds before you do, giving you the time needed to dodge. And just like that, New Orleans, this Nagato is putting himself into a position where he's got to show his side to something. He's trying to turn away, but he's going to get pinned by this island, and Zach has a beautiful broadside right here. All the shells, but ooh, he ate a big one in return. Is it going to be worth it? I'd say it was. 13,000 damage, knocking off half of that Nagato's remaining health. And finally, the destroyer gets spotted again. The Benson is making a last-ditch run for the cap to try to cap the game out and win. And on one hand, that's concerning because, you know, Benson versus Mahan, the Benson could win it, though it looks like he's run himself aground, so maybe the Mahan has a chance. But if that Benson could kill the Mahan and get into that cap, Zach's team may be too far away to have been able to get back. Fortunately, Zach should be able to do some massive damage to this Nagato. And because I said something, he didn't. Only 2,700 damage. And, well, now the Eugen is probably going to be the ship to finish off that Nagato. Though, doesn't really seem to be firing much, which is kind of curious. And the Nagato runs himself aground. That is game over. Going to be hard to miss from this kind of range. There's the Kraken, 133,000 damage. And, well, just like I was worried about, the Benson managed to kill the Mahan. So now it's a race for the cap. And this is one of those situations where I would be talking to my teammates. You know, the Gneisenau is up in the north. You know, you tell them, get back to the cap. We're going for the enemy one. You can split up, because even if that Benson gets into the cap, all the Gneisenau has to do is get in there, and it stops them from capturing points, which can allow these two guys in the south to run away with the cap and, you know, end the game. Curiously, though, the Benson's last known position indicator has him facing out to the east, and he is currently spotting Zach here in the Fuso, which based on the ring and where this island was tells me he's somewhere down here in the south. And that's one of those things when I talk about sight lines and reading the map that I'm always speaking of. You look at the last known position where you are and just look out, you know, on the arc that he's probably on, and where that island was, you know, really only paints a sector down here that he could have been spotted from by that destroyer, which tells you the destroyer's somewhere here. Then, based on when the destroyer disappeared, or, well, detection ended, it kind of tells you furthermore that, you know, the DD's really got to be somewhere down there, or maybe have been out here, was detecting him, and is now in the center of this island. But either way, you can really tell a lot just reading the map late game like this. When there's only one or two ships left, you can pretty much figure out where someone is just based on when you are and are not spotted. And that's one of the reasons I don't really think RPF is that strong. You know, late game, sure, it can be handy for hunting down one remaining destroyer, but for the most part, just looking down in this bottom right corner tells you all you need to know, and lo and behold, there's the Benson. Pretty much exactly in that area I thought he was in. He fires his guns, gives his position away, pops smoke, thus eliminating his own spotting. And I always question a ship when they do that. Particularly something like the Benson, because I believe the Benson can stealth fire if built properly. But with the Benson not going for the cap, you've pretty much got this game sealed up. Once again, Zach is spotted, means the Benson's left the smoke. So now it's just a waiting game. He either shoots and gets spotted, or he doesn't and the game ends. And either way, this one's over in 10 seconds because that is all that's left on the clock. Puts the spotting plane in the air, hoping for that last minute shot. There's the shells from the Benson. Not enough time to return fire. Well, I personally always loved the Fuso, and that game there pretty much shows why. It is capable of putting out a massive amount of damage, and the guns just work. And the same can be said for Zach here. 388,000 credits, 7,900 experience almost, Confederate, Dreadnought, Kraken, Devastating Strike, all the, badges you want, 133,000 damage, a couple citadels, but mostly just standard penetrating shots that added up. And that's what I find the Fuso really does well. And the Congo before it did it well as well. It just kind of builds. And no surprise, they're top of the team with those 5 kills and all that damage. And that game really could have been a closer finish than it was. I think the Benson on the other team made a couple misplays here and there and ultimately hurt them. And when you do look at the damage that Zach managed, across the board, some pretty decent numbers on some very deadly ships. So well done, Zach. Thank you for sending the video in. If you guys enjoyed this, please consider giving it a thumbs up or subscribing to the channel. And as always, I'm Qckslvrslash, and I'll have another one for you guys later.